Hey, everybody. Today we are going to talk about building confidence for public speaking success. I really believe the number one thing you can do to be an effective speaker is to be confident. The more confident you are, the more people will see that, the more they will be drawn to you and they'll listen to you closely. And honestly, they'll forgive you if you really mess something up. I have not always been a super confident person. I think my confidence really, I can nail it down to a certain time in high school, and I'm going to tell you about this. Um, it's a little embarrassing, but I want to relay this story because I think it's really important. So my very first day of high school, so I grew up in Massachusetts in a small town called Attleboro, Massachusetts. I went to high school at a private Catholic high school in Providence, Rhode Island called LaSalle Academy. I was nervous as hell. First day going there as a pimply 14-year-old. Um, when my parents dropped me off in front of the school, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know any of my teachers. I'd never been on campus before, other than a really brief tour. I didn't know anything about it. So they dropped me off in front of the school. I have all my books. I have all my notebooks, my textbooks, everything. And, there's probably a few hundred kids kind of milling about like this school area. And so I walk up the steps. And as I'm walking up the steps, walking into starting my high school career, I tripped. I tripped on the steps. I dropped everything. I dropped my um, notebooks and all of my notebooks and pens and papers. Textbooks went flying in the air. Everyone turned and looked at me. I had, about 300 eyes on you. So if you can remember back to when you were in high school, think about how embarrassing it would be to lay on the ground after you fell in front of a bunch of people. So that was the first start of my high school. That was the first day of my high school career. I hadn't even walked into the school yet when that happened. And unfortunately, that's a true story. I'm not really making that up. Um, and then later on, and you'll see where I'm going with all this in a second, but later on in homeroom that same day, um, that teacher, our homeroom teacher, asked us each to introduce ourselves. And she said, introduce yourself with a nickname or an adjective that starts with a letter of your first name, and then say your first name. So basically, if your name was uh, Tom, you would say, I'm ticklish Tom, right? Or if you were Bill, you would say, I'm bashful Bill. So it goes around the room, gets to me, and when it gets to my turn, I say, she points to me, and I go, oh, I'm joking, Jim. Complete dead silence in the room. And I want to say that I completely died inside in that stillness. I've never seen something as quiet as that room was in that moment. And to this day, however many years later on, it is still, if not the most embarrassing moment of my life, definitely in the top two or three. When I think of joking Jim, my stomach literally clenches. So anyway, I'm prefacing this all because this is the start of my high school career. I fall on my face, and then later on the day, I say my name is Joking Jim. And I would tell you, if you ever are faced with this exercise, never use the word joking in a room full of people that you don't know, because if they don't laugh, you look like an idiot, like I did. And in that first part of freshman year, I really was a nobody. I was in honors classes, but I didn't really know anybody. I was from a different state. They were all Guido Italian Catholics or Irish Catholics, and I'm Asian Italian. So I didn't really fit in perfectly. And I would say 90% of the kids had either gone to middle school together or knew each other from other things because they were from a different state. So fitting easy really wasn't easy for me in a class of 280 freshmen. So at the time I was like, well, shit, I need to do something. I don't want to be like, just have a high school career that just sucks. So I decided to run for student council. And I don't know why. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And I really didn't think anything of the fact that I was going to have to give a speech. And I remember the day of the elections because we all had to go up in front of our entire class and give a speech in this big auditorium. And I think, I'm sitting up at the thing, and like we're all facing the crowd, and there's a big podium right here. I think, 3 or 4 kids went, 5 kids maybe went before I did. And they all gave the same speech about, we're going to make a lot of changes and blah, blah, blah. Or try hard and, we can really do some great things for the school. I'm really committed to, you know, being the best I can be and da 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 da, all this stuff, right? And as a 14-year-old kid, I'm sitting there and I remember thinking, holy shit, my speech is just like theirs and it's going to suck because it sounds just like theirs and their speeches suck. So I have this wave of panic that comes through me. I'm sure you felt that before a speaking engagement. And I'm thinking in my head, oh my God, I'm going to be known as Joking Jim, the guy who gives shitty speeches and trips on stairs. So I get to the podium. It's finally my turn. And I start giving the same boring speeches that they are giving. And I can hear yawns in the background and I can hear myself mumbling. And I think it was at this moment in my life that I learned my very first great lesson. And it was at that very first moment that that little voice in my head said, fuck this. And at that moment, I took my speech, crumpled up my speech. I tossed it out over the podium and I spoke to my fellow 280 freshmen unrehearsed. I have no idea what I told them. I think the gist of it was that if they elected me, I would do hard. I would try hard to do what I could so we'd have a fun year. I just sort of opened up my chest and let my heart fall out. I just kind of, spoke from my 14-year-old heart and honestly held my breath. And when I was finished, I got a huge applause and actually a standing ovation. And then later on that day, I couldn't believe it, but I ended up winning. I won the election by just an insane amount of votes. I actually got more votes than anybody else. And for the rest of that week and for the months to follow, people would come up to me like, "Hey, you were the kid who tossed the speech, man, right? Like that was so cool." My reputation had been launched, and I had something more valuable than a fake ID. I had serious Catholic school, Catholic high school street cred. From that moment, other kids looked at me differently. I went on to be elected to student council every year for the next 4 years. I also was lucky enough to be able to skip the usual cliques that are in high school, and I had my close friends, and I hung out, but I also hung out with the jocks because I played lacrosse. I hung out with the preppies, the honor students, the Guidos, the rejects, the alternative kids, the goth kids, everybody. And honestly, it all started just because I went off script. And looking back on it all these years later, it's amazing to see how much, a really tiny, infinitesimal, small amount of confidence changed my life. Just a small amount of saying, fuck it, and leaping into the fray really went a long way for me. And so it taught me a couple lessons. And the first one is that it only takes a really small act of confidence and courage to change your life. For me, it was 10 seconds during a speech. That's it. I sure as shit wasn't courageous going into that speech or any other time, but just mustering up that courage during time really changed everything. And I think the other thing is small acts of confidence really inspire other people. Even a tiny bit of confidence displayed at the right moment can really move mountains in your life. People like other people who are either fearless or appear to be confident. It makes them feel safe, makes them feel protected. And honestly, I think it makes them feel better about themselves. And the other thing I learned about that really important day for me was that confidence begets confidence. You show a little bit of fuck it, just be confident attitude, and things don't go wrong. It makes you even more confident for the next time you try something. So there's my story about high school. And as it relates to public speaking, I'm a big proponent of let's do everything we can to build your confidence. You'll see that a lot in this channel and everywhere else that we're involved. Is like we do everything possible to help you build your confidence because it is probably the biggest thing you can do to be a good speaker in the world. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening.